Welcome to this edition of Real World Business Law, where we talk about real-world legal issues impacting businesses and executives. I'm Declan Leonard. I'm managing partner here at Berenzweig Leonard, and I also head up the employment law practice here.
I'm Aleksey House. I just graduated from law school, and I'm an incoming associate here at Berenzweig Leonard this fall.
Aleksey, this is awesome to have you here. In fact, Aleksey's such a trooper. She's knee-deep in the middle of bar review. What was your class today?
Evidence. A good 4 hours of evidence this morning.
You know what they ought to teach you instead of evidence in law school? They ought to teach you how to do Zoom where you don't have reverb or this echo. Todd, our great producer here, I had a 5-hour deposition yesterday, and we could not get the sound right the whole time.
You'd think that people could do it now, but not any offense to you, Todd.
It even took Todd a while. I was a little bit disappointed there, but we got it going. But those are the things nowadays with remote and everything that they should be teaching.
Yeah,
evidence. You just say objection and then just move
exactly.
on.
I think I had my fair share. I'm done.
But anyways, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to be talking today about cyber. First off, apologize for my voice. Got a little bit of a cold. That's all it is. And we're going to be talking about cyber. And you're no stranger to this topic. Talk about a little bit your experience in the cyber world.
So I wrote a huge journal article on the new CMMC for defense contractors, which is really it's called the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and it's just creating a unified cybersecurity standard for defense contractors. So I threw myself into the cybersecurity world last year, and with the big events that have been happening lately, it just seems like a really salient topic for people to discuss.
Excellent timing, I tell you that, because it's everywhere. But more recently in the news and everything in the last couple of weeks, why are we so fixated as a country on cyber?
So I don't think it's that people are terrified of these cyber attacks that are happening. It's more so that people went to the gas station and they couldn't get gas.
Yeah, you're right. That impacted everybody.
Right, and it just forced people to start talking about it. And I think people are starting to realize that cyber affects them even if they think that it doesn't.
So whenever, I've talked to people about cyber, whenever I've talked to other lawyers about cyber, it always seems to me like it's a little bit of fear mongering. It's like if you don't take these steps now, you're bound to be, hit, hacked, done whatever, and you're going to suffer for it. And I've always thought, I don't know if that's the best approach. How would you recommend the right approach and when you're discussing cyber with businesses?
I would say you have to look at it now at this point as a necessity. But at this point, it could be a competitive advantage for you going forward, because with these new requirements and everything coming out, it's going to be a requirement specifically for government contractors. They have to have a certain level of cybersecurity before they can bid on a contract. And so you want to have that cybersecurity hygiene, we'll call it, to bid on those contracts. And if your competitors don't have it, then you have that leg up on them.
So it's a little bit like a race to the certification process. If you end up going into a contract procurement and you're already certified, you've got a competitive advantage. Is that how it's going to work?
I would say so, yes. At this point, some things are still a little shaky. It's like a patchwork of regulations among the states, and that's why there's this call for a unified standard for federal contractors, for states, everybody. And so I would say that if you start investing in it now, you're going to have that competitive advantage a few months down the road, years down the road, because you're going to know what to do, you're going to have the resources, and that payoff is going to You'll see it in the end.
And the head in the sand approach is just not going to work anymore. You mentioned a unified standard. Up until now, what has been the landscape when it comes to cyber?
It's a complete patchwork of regulations. Different states have different rules, different requirements, and that was that big push for the federal government defense contractors specifically to have a unified standard so that everybody's following the same rules, because the supply chain has so many players in it that if you as the prime have really advanced cybersecurity but your subs don't and they're further down the line, it can affect the whole chain. So that's why they're calling for this unified standard.
So we've heard like California has obviously been one of these states that has really taken the lead in promulgating cybersecurity rules and regulations. I think New York is another one. So are you here breaking some important news today that Congress got together, the Republicans and the Democrats, they got together. It was a love fest.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And they passed comprehensive cyber reform. Is that what happened?
Not exactly. Wishful thinking, right? But they are making steps in the right direction. I think this is a wake-up call for America, that cybersecurity is important, and there's vulnerabilities that need to be paid attention to. So President Biden issued that executive order that's kind of making a move in that direction to get everybody on the same page, or to at least start talking about it. And so there's going to be new contract requirements. There's going to have like a review board, things like that. But we're not at the point yet where we have a unified regulation, but I think that's something that we're going to need.
So Biden's executive order, right now it only applies to government contractors, right?
So it's calling for immediate review of FAR clauses and DFARs and things like that.
You're not even a lawyer yet. You're already using acronyms. The Federal Acquisition Regulations.
Yes.
So those are the rules that govern government contractors?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And then it's going to influence industry best practices. And if you're not a government contractor, but you work with someone who's in, let's just say, like the finance world, you might do business together and you share the same information, and it might affect, like, their requirements might be pushed on you as well.
So you got to start somewhere. We all know executive orders are a lot easier than passing laws through Congress.
Right.
So the thought is that this will eventually sort of filter down to other businesses. And so you see the landscape as down the road, even though this may only apply to a certain subset now, it's going to be pretty much the norm down the road?
Oh, I would say so for sure, yeah. Right now, I would say immediately, well, even with the CMMC, that applied to government contractors, defense contractors immediately. Like, they had a really aggressive timeline, and I would say that they're trying to do that now too. Just they know that there's a larger audience that this needs to reach, and so they're asking for comments and people to join in and kind of give suggestions on how or what we need. But I would say that everybody will be affected by it within the next 5 years.
So this is something that businesses really need to keep an eye on. In the past, it seems like businesses would say, look, I really don't have money in my budget for cyber. I'm just trying to make payroll, trying to make rent. But what you're saying is now they pretty much have to, but they shouldn't look at it as a sunk cost as much as perhaps a way to differentiate themselves. It actually could result in more revenue at the end of the day, couldn't it?
Oh, of course, especially because in 5 years, say, if you have to have a certain level and you didn't invest the money, let's say today, you're not going to be able to get that revenue in the future. And then if we talk about breaches and possible legal liability that could arise if you're not taking care of cybersecurity the way you need to, it could cost you money in the long run on the other side.
And cyber, sorry about that.
No. I just mean that, like, it could negatively impact you. Instead of you spending money now, you might have to pay money later because of your failure to invest at this time.
And it's never a good way to run a business. Cyber attacks used to be, the federal government would be an intended target of hackers and ransomware and everything. Then it was, a lot of credit card companies. They seemed to go after the big fish for the longest time. They were going after, big box chains, Target and some of these others. But is that the case anymore?
I would say no. I think that it's still on a lot of people, hackers' minds. Like, they want to hit the jackpot and get noticed. But a lot of these hacks, they get in through the end of the supply chain, the bottom of the supply chain, where things are really fluid and information's moving around, and you're not right under the government's thumb or eye. So you might not be as strict with your cybersecurity requirements as, say, like Lockheed Martin. And so I think hackers are starting to realize that they can get to the big fish by going through the lower channels.
So what it could end up doing is it could give a lot more confidence if these smaller players, these smaller businesses are looking to do business with some of the bigger, more familiar companies that we all know about. If they're able to show that they've got the appropriate cyber protections in place, even if they're doing it voluntarily at this time, it would really give a lot of confidence, probably will allow them to win that business.
Oh, for sure. And that's actually one of the things I wrote about, was just there needs to be more collaboration and synergy going on in every industry. The big players need to work with the little players and share these best practices, and that's actually one of the things that the executive order calls for too. It's just better information sharing overall, because if we don't start talking about it and making sure everybody's on the same page, it's not going to get any better.
So we're looking down the road. We're seeing where things are going in cyber. That it's not certainly going away. It's going to become more of the norm. That every company is going to have this top of mind. It's going to have to be a regular part of your operations. But let's look at today. What are three things? Let's just say that companies can do. Companies of all sizes. Our client base is usually small, mid. What can they do today?
I would say if you haven't already considered moving to the cloud, look at moving to the cloud. It's just a better centralized system, and there's more ways to secure it. And that's one of the things that is going to be a big push in the coming years also. So I'd say
that's good advice.
One.
Yeah.
Second would be for people still doing remote work. You want to make sure that you have those policies and procedures in place to be able to do that safely.
Yeah, this is happening. A lot of these cyber attacks are happening at a time where it's like almost the perfect storm. So many people are working from home, have been working from home, of course, for the last year during the pandemic. And so there's sort of a hodgepodge of IT. I've got my computer at home, but I have my other computer here, and I'm loading in. And it's just, it's amazing that there hasn't been bigger problems.
Right, and I know that you love this, but multi-factor authentication and encryption,
I can't even remember. I can't remember any of my passwords.
You got to start writing them down.
I can barely get into my garage when I get home. It's unbelievable. But I know, and our office, our director of operations here, Jenny, always is on top of me.
Yeah.
I know encryption's also another one, but we've got to draw our line somewhere here.
Right, exactly. You don't want to make it too hard, but just kidding. You do need to make it somewhat harder.
Yes.
And then I guess third would just be people need to start looking into cybersecurity insurance. The more frequent this happens, the more likely it is that you're going to need it at some point in the future, and just having those safeguards. As an example, if I take credit card payments, that opens me up to liability to the customers or to the customers' family members, and if they use their credit card elsewhere and things like that. So.
Yeah. So cyber insurance, something that you wouldn't have even heard of, a number of years ago, and now it's becoming pretty much the norm that businesses really should have this. It's the phrase that you hear a lot in the cyber world is you have to basically be right 100% of the time in keeping these hackers and ransomware and everything out of your system, and they only have to be right, one time.
Right.
And so even with all of the stuff that we're talking about doing, going to the cloud, having double authentication, all of those safeguards, I mean, let's face it, these people spend their lives trying to, overcome whatever the latest and greatest preventative measures are sitting out there.
Right.
Insurance is just one extra safeguard. These cyber events could really be killers for businesses, and so cyber insurance is just kind of an additional safeguard.
And I would say it's better to jump on that boat now, because I can only imagine that it's going to become more expensive the more these attacks start to happen, and it all goes back to the competitive advantage. You want to change your attitude now so that you're in a better position to deal with those threats later, because they're only going to increase.
Yeah, great. Aleksey, great discussion. Thank you for, again, taking time out of your bar.
Oh, happy to do so. Thank you for having me.
Is cyber a topic on the bar? I don't remember.
Apparently it should be.
We had local government. Is that still on there?
Yep.
I have no idea
why. They
start
us that in late June, I want to say.
Unbelievable. And yet something relevant that we're talking about here, cyber, should probably be switched in or replaced in for that one.
I agree.
Well, good deal. Well, listen, good luck with everything. We look forward to you joining us this fall.
Thank you.
And
I'm so excited.
hope everybody enjoyed this edition of Real World Business Law.
Thank you.
Take care.